Okay, so now I'm just going to continue on with a bit more of a practical example. Okay, so starting off with some of the things I just forgot to show before is that with where some of the foibles with VBA, here you've got source range variable being declared as a range, and I'm assigning an actual range to that source variable. You can see here you need the set keyword when assigning ranges to variables, whereas with variants and a lot of your more, what would you call it, primitive data types, you don't need to use the set keyword. So that's just a VBA foible. Also with sub procedures, if you can do it two different ways. You can put the call keyword there and then call the sub procedure as you would a function in most programming languages, or you can just forgo the call keyword, but then you also have to forget about the brackets. So you just put your arguments directly following the sub-procedure name. So if you're not sure what the rule is, and another thing you can look for is you can see here when I delete the call keyword, it puts puts a space in between the procedure and the arguments. So if you see that space pop in, it's probably a hint you need to make a change or do something different. So if I put the call back in, you can see that gets removed, and that will work. Okay, so what I'm doing here is pretty much what I said before, where I'm just going to go through and extract the totals and then just count back 5 rows to get the header, the subheader related to that total, and then we'll just put that in the destination range. So also there's just a function call here, so I'm setting the state column number, where I'm getting that by passing on the source data as by reference and Queensland as val. So by reference, by default, if these are optional, if you don't put them in, I think they're just by val by default. So yeah, so the advantage of using by reference here is hopefully I'm not deep cloning the source data. This is going to point back to this source data variable. So it's going to reuse it in a sense, whereas this is just a string. So I think even if I put byref here, because of the primitive data type rules, it's going to clone anyway, so it probably doesn't matter. So that's the use of a function assigning a variable. And you can see here again that I'm just doing that by assigning a result to the function name, which is the equivalent of the return value statement. So if I just go back to Excel, and hopefully this is working. And let's go to macros. If I run that, filling cells. So yeah, you can see that took a bit longer because I named the source data range as a bunch of columns instead of just a shorter area. But I find that's not usually where the logjam is. So it's personal preference, I guess. You could speed it up, but then you've got to mess around with where the bottom of the range ends, and I always find that a bit of a pain to do. So it's a bit of a lazy option that takes a bit more time, but it depends on your use case, I guess. Okay, so it's transposed the values out here, so we should see resuscitation for Queensland is there. If I was to do this, come on. If I was to do this with New South Wales, is it? Yeah, so run this again. Again, it's just taking a bit of time because the destination data range is probably too big. And so we should get New South Wales, yeah. So resuscitation, emergency, etc. Okay, what else? What else? Um, yeah, I think that's it for this. I'll stop that.